QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022 Customer Center. Get ready because we bookkeeping pros are moving up the hilltop with QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2022. Here we are in our free QuickBooks sample file, sample rock castle construction, going through the setup process, going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list, giving us the open windows on the left-hand side, going to the company dropdown, opening up that home page. Then we're going to maximize that home page into that gray area, maximizing home page, opening the reports, going to the reports drop-down, company and financial, taking a look at the balance sheet standard report. There's our balance sheet standard, as we can see in the left-hand side. Then reports drop-down again, company and financial. Take a look at that profit and loss standard. I'm going to change that first date to January, and there we have it. So now let's go back on over to the home page. And we looked at the customer section on the home page, which could be called the sales section, revenue section, accounts receivable section. Now we're going to be looking at the customer center, remembering that when we think about customers, we're thinking about people that are ultimately going to be paying us for goods and services that we provide to them. We can go into the center by selecting this icon here, or I prefer to go to the center by going to the customer dropdown up top and then the center. The reason I prefer this approach is because the dropdown is always available even if you don't have the home page open. Opening up the customer center, then here we have it. I'm going to close the window on the left-hand side to give us a little bit more space. Looks a lot like the vendor center that we saw in a prior presentation, but now we're tracking customers. This will become most important typically when you're dealing with customers where you have amounts that are going to be out due or due to you. Those would be types of industries where you're invoicing the customers and you're going to be tracking who owes you money, tracking in essence the accounts payable. However, it can also be important for any kind of company because you might want to track, of course, how much you've sold by particular customer, which you could do here. You can also use reports to track similar information, which we'll look at in future presentations. So we have on the left-hand side, we got the customer and jobs. We'll talk a little bit more about jobs. They've got jobs here set up in this particular type of company because it's a job cost type of system. That's another specialized type system that we'll look at later. And we got a whole course on a job cost system and getting into more detail about it if you would like to take a look at that. So we could set up the new customers here. We could do so by selecting the new customer up top. We could select a new customer. I'm not going to add one, just taking a look at the data input for it. And then we can add the customer here. We'll do this in more detail in the second half of the course, but just note that the customer's a little bit different than we typically would see on the vendor side. When we're paying someone, for example, like the utility company or the phone company, then we might just want the name of the company and how we're going to pay them. When we look at the customer side, then it's more likely that we're going to want more information if we can get it, including their contact information and the payment information and so on, so that we can, keep in contact and hopefully have future business transactions, typically with most types of businesses. But similar kind of data input format to add the customer. Note that you can also add the customer as you do sales type of entries, including an invoice and a sales receipt. So then you can have the new transaction. These are going to be the normal kind of transactions that you would have for the sales cycle, including what you'd see on the home page, which we'll go into in more depth in future presentations to each of them. Estimates, invoice, sales receipt, statement changes, and so on. We can print the job list. These are reports. These are just quick links to get to those reports. Export a customer list in Excel, for example, and then we've got the Word, prepare letter to, and so on, and then income tracker, which is another way that you can sort this information. So then you've got your information on the left-hand side. Oftentimes you would be coming in here saying if someone was asking you, like a customer was asking you about a certain type of transaction, or if you're looking to collect on a particular type of transaction and you want to see the detail, you might then go here. You might then go to the drop-down. You can have all customers, active customers. All customers would include those customers that you have made inactive. So in other words, you might do that in the instance where you have a customer that's old. You can't delete the customer because you need the data in the system, but you'd rather not have it show up in the customer list. Therefore, you make them inactive, and therefore the default is the active customers, the ones you're currently working with. Customers with open items, clearly an item that you'll probably be sorting to often if you were working in here to see who owes you money. And then we've got the customers with overdue invoices, customers with almost due invoices. So these two meaning the invoices are coming due shortly or they're overdue, they're past due. So if I was to select the open invoices, for example, now I'm only showing those customers that have the activity with open activity open. Let's go to this Birch customer. Then we got the information on the right-hand side. We can dive back into this information by either you could double click here to get into the customer detail, or you can hit the little pencil up top to get into that customer information if you needed to adjust or make any adjustments to the address, the payment settings, and so on. Closing that back out. Then we got the information up top with the customer. You can also add an attachment, by the way, meaning like any attachment related to the customer that you want connected or attached to the customer center. Then we got the information which was populated through that data input format. We've got our tabs up top. The tabs include the transactions like invoices and payments, so you can track, in essence, the activity that has taken place. Note the transactions here. This is what you would expect to see, right? You got an invoice and then you got a payment. That's what you expect to see on the customer side of thing. And then we've got the open transactions that have not yet been paid. You can sort this item, if we had a lot of transactions, by all transactions, all sales transactions, balance detail, payments, estimates, invoices, and so on as well, so you can get more detail and sort on those particular transactions in the event you're dealing with a customer that has a whole bunch of activity. You also have the filtering options that you will recall. The filtering options will come into play if you choose, say, one of the transaction types, open invoices, overdue invoices, for example. And then you've got the fiscal year that you can adjust for the year of the transactions. Contacts information. So this is going to be information, some of which would populate when you enter the data up top. The to-dos related to them, you can add the to-dos. You've got the notes, which could be useful for tracking further information about particular clients, because you do, of course, possibly want to build a long-term relationship with them, depending on the type of industry you're in. And then the sent emails on the right-hand side. Going back to the first tab, possibly or most likely the tab you'd be working with most often. You can manage transactions and run reports on down below. The next item we would probably look at is the transactions tab to the right of the customer and jobs. These will look familiar because we looked at them when we looked at the flow chart on the home page. They're also items that we'll go into in more depth in future presentations, but they're in the flowchart for accounts receivable or the sales cycle. We've got the estimates, we got the invoices, we got the statement changes, sales receipts, we've got the received payments, credit memos, and refunds. So we could select, for example, the invoices. We might be looking at particular invoices that we have not yet received. So in other words, if you're looking into payments that people owe you, invoices that you've made, you might look at those by who owes you that money, or you might try to say which invoices are still open and try to sort your invoices that are open. Once you open those up, you can then do your sorting up top, all invoices or simply possibly open invoices, giving you a more detail on the ones that have not yet been closed, and overdue invoices, giving you those overdue, none in this case. And then of course you've got your fiscal year here as well. So that's the general layout with the customer center. Note that some of this information as well you can kind of see in the reports. So if you tie this into, if I open this up and we go to the balance sheet, one of the major reports you're looking at or comparing to here with the customers would be the accounts receivable, an accrual type of account. You wouldn't have accounts receivable, in other words, if on a cash basis. And this will tell you how much is owed to you. The next thing you want to know is who owes that money, which you could sort in that format that we looked at in the customer center, or you can generate reports that can help you to track that information as well by going to the reports drop-down, customers and receivable, customer balance detail, for example, report, breaking the information out by customer, giving us a lot of detail related to it, similar to the transaction detail, and the bottom line of it, adding up, supporting 93,007.93, the amount on the balance sheet, 93,007.93. As we keep on continuing to go through these transactions, you want to think of the transactions as how they will affect the financial statements. And although those are like reports in QuickBooks, those are the major financial statement reports. All other reports you can generally think of as supplemental, supplementing some line items, such as in this case, accounts receivable being supplemented by these sub-reports broken out by customer.